All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. We're talking web forms, and we're into the basic native form controls portion. And they mentioned here in the previous article, we marked up a functional web form example, and we introduced some form controls. Now we'll look at the functionality of some of those and some different controls. All right. So as they mentioned, we've already discussed the form control. Remember, forms are surrounded by the form control. The field set, which basically drew that line around everything. The legend, which gave a title to the field set. The text area, which allowed for multi-line input. The label, which we typically associate with either input fields or text area fields to literally provide a label. The button, which again can have the states of submit, reset, or button, and input. Now, with input, there are things in there we have not talked about yet, but we will. All right. The common input types, as they mentioned there, and I guess this is where we're going to. Button, checkbox, file, hidden, image, password, radio, reset, submit, and text. Some of the attributes that are common to all forms will also be discussed in here. All right. It says here the features in this article are supported by all browsers, which is not the case for all form controls. Some of these new HTML5 controls, most of them are by at least all modern browsers. All right, but when they say all browsers, again, some browsers are older browsers. All right, text input fields are the most basic form widgets. They're a convenient way to let the user enter any kind of data. We've already looked at these. All basic text controls share common behavior. They can be marked as read-only, and people sometimes get confused over read-only as opposed to like disabled. If something is read-only, so for instance, if I bring up a calculator and I bring up 58 and I divide that by 9 and I hit enter, technically this answer here is read-only. Now, if I didn't like the fact that I did 58, oh, I meant to do 57. Well, I can remove that 8 and put in a 7. If I didn't mean to divide it by 9, oh, I meant to divide it by 13. I can remove that and put in 13. But once I put those in and hit equal, this cannot change. It is a read-only field. All right. Now notice that if it's read-only, you can't modify it, but it's still sent with the rest of the form data. On the other hand, if something is disabled, it can't be modified, and it's not sent with the rest of the form data. Now, placeholder I've already shown you. It made the text a little lighter, and typically you use it with like an input, some kind of a text input box to let users know. All right. In fact, to a lot of people, what's in vogue today, when we do something like this, instead of having name, email, and password there, you'll sometimes see it. They won't have any label whatsoever. Instead, in here, they will have a placeholder that says something like, please enter name here, please enter email here, please enter password here. The other thing too is notice with a password, if I put hello in there, it comes up as black dots. In the olden days, it would come up as asterisks. The point is you can't see it. All right. So what do we have here? We have a title, and these are radio buttons. So again, only one can be chosen. What if we wanted one to be chosen all the time? All right. I think at least we could have gone back to that one. Well, I don't have it there anymore. But in fact, let me just do a view page source where we had this one here and we had these 3 buttons. So again, that was the king, the queen, etc. You should be able to come in here and say, I think it's checked, C-H-E-C-K-E-D. It's either checked or selected. And one of them would be selected or checked then. The advantage of doing that is just that one is always going to be selected from the get-go. All right. Form fields, or these input fields, can be constrained in size. Now that's how big the box is, and max length, which is the maximum number of characters. So for instance, if I had a field like zip code, and I could make the max length 5, which would only allow 5 digits, or I could make it 10, which would allow 5 digits, a hyphen, and 4 digits type of thing. All right, they can benefit from spell checking using the spell check attribute and I didn't even know there was one of those. All right. The input element is unique amongst HTML elements because it can take many forms depending on the type attribute. All right. So when you set the type to text, it's for a single line input. So you can go out here if you want to find examples, but I'm not going to do that right now. You can go to the See It Live, and there's some examples. So notice again, if I come in here and put an S in, I get that. But if I put in that, it's totally fine. Passwords, as mentioned, show like this. Search, allow me to do just that. Numbers, so if I do make something number and it looks like they didn't, it would only take numbers. And web addresses want there to be an actual address in there. So if I put in hello there, you'll notice please enter a URL. In fact, if I put in hello.com, it still says that because it wants, how about a www dot? Still doesn't like that. But if I put in, whoops, it should be a period. But if I put in http://www, notice that the error goes away. All right, just a couple of quick examples for you. All right. Single line text fields have only one true constraint. If you type the line breaks, the browser removes the line breaks before sending the data. All right. Here's some examples that you can take a look at. HTML5 enhanced the basic original style by adding special values for the type. And it says we'll cover these in the next article. So we'll look at the newer ones. Okay. Password I've already talked about with you. Doesn't add any special constraints, rather, but it only shows the black dots. Hidden fields are kind of interesting. One thing about hidden fields is hidden fields are sent when you send the system over. But I want to give you an example of what you might use for a hidden field. Let's assume that I work at a pizza place and we've got online ordering. What I might have as a hidden field would be something like tax rate. Not the amount of taxes that you pay, but the tax rate I might have in there as a hidden field. So I can take your subtotal, multiply it by the tax rate to find out your taxable total, that kind of thing. All right. Other types added in HTML5 covered in the next tutorial include search, URL, and tell. All right, checkable items, checkboxes, and radio buttons. We've started talking about these, as it says, and I wasn't sure. It is checked. So had I gone back, as I mentioned to you before, and put checked in there under either king, queen, or joker. So let's say that I put it under queen. That would mean that as soon as you brought this up, that would be checked. Since right now none of them are checked, when you bring it up, none of them are checked in here. If I wanted to assure one was always checked, I could set one to checked inside of my actual HTML. For maximum usability and accessibility, you are advised to surround each list of related items in a field set with a legend, providing a description. And again, what they're doing an excellent job of in here is letting you know and trying to set this up for accessibility purposes from the get-go. All right, each individual label elements should be contained in its own list item or similar. Again, as we mentioned before, can be an unordered list, an ordered list, a div, a paragraph, or whatever. The associated label is generally placed after the radio button or checkbox, so the stuff will appear to the right. A checkbox is created using the input elements with a typeset to checkbox. All right, now we've already seen these, or have we? No, we have not looked at a checkbox yet, it looks like. All right, so let's go back. And here's an example. So choose all the vegetables you would like to eat. All right, so it's a checkbox. The difference, I'm going to put this in here, and I'm actually going to come back in to right here. I'll remove it right away, but let's open up. In fact, let's do this. We'll go to our forms, and I'm going to copy this payment form, and I'm going to copy it to, let's call it veggie form. All right, and let's open up that vegetable form. And I'm going to leave everything in here that was there. But down at the bottom, I didn't have it anymore. I didn't think it'd save it, but we're going to put in this. Now this is going to change the way our form looks, but it's okay. It's a veggie form anyway, so that's fine. So let's bring that one up, because what I want to show you in here is the bottom of the form, and that's down here. All right, choose all the vegetables you like. Now when we had in here, when we had the radio buttons, you could only choose one. With checkboxes, you can choose 0 or 1 or 2 or all 3 in this case. So if you want to give the user multiple choices, so let's say that you ask the user what shift they wanted to work. If they had to choose one, you would use radio buttons. If you would allow them to choose any one that they wanted, potentially you could use checkboxes. All right. All right, there's their example. Now you can work with a focus, you can work with a default. There's a lot of things you can do with this. All right, so this was their example. Oh, this is a different one. Notice that. Typically that's referred to as a switch. All right. Radio buttons we've kind of talked about already. And again, you could have put the word check there. All right, so here we're changing this and we're putting this in with radio buttons. So let's put that in to the example that we have here. Just throw it in there. I'm not even going to worry right now about formatting that. And let's look at what that looks like. Now we've got that down here. So notice this was choose all the ones you'd like. This is what is your favorite meal. And notice since we set check to soup, that's check to start with. But we can change it to any of those. All right, so again, if it was me, of course, it would be the pizza. That would be checked. You saw my gut, you'd know why. And notice now pizza is the one that's checked. All right. Actual buttons. And again, we've talked about this a little bit before, but the radio button, as it says, isn't actually a button despite its name. We've already looked at the submit button. We've already looked at the reset button. But there's also one that's just called button. As it says, it has no automatic effect. You instead customize that using your own JavaScript. All right. The image input type also renders as a button, which they'll cover later. So here's some examples of buttons. There's a submit. Notice there we put it into 2 lines, 1 line. There's a reset. This is a button you'd have to add some of your own code to, either one of these two. All right. All right, so we already looked at the submit button. And again, that is equated with whatever you put in the form tag under action. All right, that's telling it when you submit this, you want it to go there. Reset, it's very important because people will tell me, in fact, I kind of unfortunately use this terminology. I use the word clear. Clear isn't exactly correct for a reset button. What a reset button does is it sets the form values back to their original or default values. All right, and the anonymous one I think we'll look at a little bit later. All right, so here's some stuff. Here's an image button. So what's the difference? You're saying type equal image. All right, source equals this, etc. And why would you use that? Well, if you've ever noticed, for example, if I go out to Amazon.com, there, now it says cart, but some places what they do is they just have a picture of a shopping cart. All right, and that would be a possibility of a reason that you'd want to use an image button. All right, file picker. I don't know if we had a file picker in our example. Doesn't. Got a date picker right there, but we don't have a file picker. With a file picker, you can basically, if we set something like that, let's put it in. Let's see what happens. Put in this. Okay, let's just leave it like this. So I will add this to the example that we had up here. Just throw this down at the bottom. Not going to put it in a field set or anything. Let's bring that up, which was here. Refresh. There it is. Choose files, and notice when I click that, it's really only going to, by default, expect that the kind of files that we're choosing are image files, because we put that filter on it right here. That says it should be an image file, and it can be anything. All right. All right. Common attributes, as we're finishing up another section here. Autofocus, as it says, lets you specify that the element should automatically have focus when the page loads. There can only be one of these, and typically it's the first field where you want the user to input information. Disabled, we've talked about. Notice the default is false for autofocus and for disabled. It indicates that the user cannot directly interact with the element. Form, we have talked about already. Name, we have talked about already. And value, as it says, is the element's initial value. There's another test your skills, which I'd highly recommend you take a look at, but that's it. And it says this article covered the older input types, and in the next one, we'll go into part 4 of our series here, which is the HTML5 input types. So I will be back with that discussion in just a few minutes.